Hi friends, let us start another new section of CNS disorders. And past videos we was telling about various topics, and in the past video we spoke about opioid analgesics, and today we'll start another new topic which is related to CNS disorders, and that is called as antidepressants. And this is a very simple topic but related to the CNS disorders. As we are talking about the depressants, we always have to see what it is related to CNS and what type of neurotransmitters are related to this type of depression. Usually whenever we are talking about a depression, we always say that particular person is depressed today. So what is the relationship of depression and the CNS disorders? So we always see our daily routine, sometimes we always make up our mood, isn't it? The mood is always of different types. Some type of mood we call it as anxiety, to do something more and more, and some type of anxiety is always going for fear. Some type of anxieties will go for the tension, stress, and some type of anxieties are related to depression. Why? Because whenever we feel of anxiety and that particular work is not done, we always make ourselves so depressed. So whenever that activity is not over, onto that track. So these are the different types of moods what we can call, and these moods are always being maintained by the neurotransmitters which are synthesized in the brain. And particularly we have 3 or 4 types of neurotransmitters which are always related to the mood. And particularly when we are talking about the mood, we always remember a neurotransmitter called as 5-HT3. Here I gave you the word here. This is called 5-HT3. So what is 5-HT? It is called 5-hydroxytryptophan. So this is called a neurotransmitter which is been synthesized in medulla oblongata and always useful for 2 to 4 types of activities. So what are those activities? They are behavior, mood, appetite and the stress. And these type of neurotransmitters are always been connected to the gastrointestinal tract by a nerve called as vagal nerve. And this vagal nerve is always connected to appetite. So this is the reason why this neurotransmitter is used for appetite also, whether it is being suppressed, whether it is being increased, whatever it is. So we can say that this type of depression is always controlled by a neurotransmitter called as 5-HT3. And according to this also, and more neurotransmitters are also correlated, and one of the other correlated is called as dopamine, that is called as DA. And this dopamine is something which is being synthesized in Niagara strata, and we always discussed in Parkinsonism, and if you want you can go for that video and get the track how this dopamine has been synthesized, and that synthesis is called as nigrostriatal pathway, and that in that way it is being synthesized in two projects. One is D1 in the direct pathway and D2 in indirect pathway. That you can go once again catch up the video of anti-Parkinsonism, then you can know more about it. And hope this is another hormone, this is another neurotransmitter which is been controlling your mood. And we have different types of other neurotransmitters also. One is called as NE, nothing but norepinephrine or non-adrenaline. We can call it as both the ways, NA or NADR or NER. So what we can call it as non-adrenaline. And including these two, you can go forward with other neurotransmitters. What are those called as histamine and cholinergics. So these are the 4 and 5 neurotransmitters which are always used for the maintenance of your depression. Now we'll see what is depressant. This depressant is an illness of psychic. What is a psychic? Psychic means mind or mental process, how the mental is being processed in our brains and how it is being controlled by neurotransmitters. So what we can call a depression is a state or a psychic state or a psychic illness which is being categorized by different types of symptoms. So what we can call this symptoms may be appetite, that means hungry, more hungry or less hungry. Depression, or anxiety. More anxiety, less anxiety. Depression, over depression. That means whenever the anxiety turns into your depression. And also sometimes we may also not be able to maintain our self-esteem. That means we are not able to control ourselves. So that is called as self-esteem. And also sometimes we feel that into the order of your depression, we always go weight and weight and weight. Weight gain will be there, and sometimes we don't know how it is being down itself. The weight is also becomes less and less and less. So that is also one of the characters of the depression. So whenever the depression is being done, these are the different types of illnesses can be forwarded, so that they are symptomized and telling you that person is always in a condition called depression. So depression is a psychic illness where it can be it can be symptomized by various symptoms, as I said before. And now today we will sing about antidepressants. So accordingly we can understand that antidepressants are the pharmacological agents which are trying to increase your neurotransmitter so that they may be channelized and giving you excitation, not the inhibition and giving you the rate of depression. And always we need to consider that these neurotransmitters which are always caused for the depression has to be released into the synaptical cleft. We know that every neurotransmitter got its own neurotransmitters. If you see the 5-HT3 neurotransmitter, it is being synthesized by the tryptophan. Tryptophan is converted into 5-HT3 and they are being stored into the synaptical vesicles. That means synaptical vesicles of neurons, and which is collecting of different types of 5-HT3 vesicles. So whenever the stage of mood comes, whenever the stage of vegetation comes, whenever the stage of depression comes, these type of neurotransmitters are released into it, but they cannot be mobilized or they cannot excite the post synapse. So what we need to do is we need to try to synthesize the neurotransmitter and get released into the presynaptical vesicle or the synaptical junction, so that it is being excited into the post synapse. Then only we can understand that the depression is being controlled. And this is called as presynapse and this is called as post synapse. That we already know that. And before entering into another neurotransmitter, we'll see what is 5-HT3. As I told you before, this 5-HT3 is being synthesized by the tryptophan and it is released into the synaptic vesicles. And here it has to be striked onto the 5-HT3 receptors for the excitation. But the thing is, here in the depression state, it can't excite. And if you see, out of 100% it is being produced, only 70% will strike your post synapse and 30% will be back into the presynaptic vesicles to store itself in the synaptic vesicles, and that is called as reuptake of 5-HT3. And here this 5-HT3 receptors can also be called as serotonin receptors, and these receptors are given over here. This is called SERT. SERT stands for serotonin reuptake transporter. So what happens, the 70% of your receptors, that means neurotransmitter, is being striked your synapse and the 30% will be striked out back to the reuptake. This is called as conversion of synaptic vesicles for the storage. Now as in the depression condition, if you see that the 5-HT3 may not be controlled by your prosynapse. Why? Because the 70% which is being transporter is not good enough, so that it has to strike. Why? Because we are in the stage of depression. And so what happens, the metabolism which is being striked out, the reuptake has to be cancelled, so that the equal amount of 30% will also strike this synapse and give you the stage of depression control. So this is the what is the mechanism of action of depressants, which is acting on 5-HT3 neurons. These are also called as serotonin neurons. Why? Because it is being synthesized by the serotonin receptors and cached by the serotonin receptors, which are being synthesized in your medulla oblongata. And now we have to see for the further step which is called as DA. That means we know that DA is called as dopamine. Dopamine is also acting on the niagara striatal pathway, where we can reach a stage called Parkinsonism. And before the attaining of Parkinsonism, you will have in a small range what is called as depressant. And in this depressant stage itself, the dopamine synthesis will be little bit altered. That means it is been little bit blocked off or inhibited, so that the stage of depression is there and we need the more and more synthesis of dopamine. So now the main target is to increase the amounts of all the neurotransmitters, so that we have to keep in mind. And now, as I told you here, the dopamine is also one of the activity. Now we'll go for the NE. NE is nothing but the norepinephrine, and this is also called as noradrenaline. So the receptors or the neurons which are acting are called as adrenergic receptors. Now the synthesis and the process is same, but the receptors may change and the words may change. So let me give you what is happening over here. And now the word is changed to NE neurons, nothing but adrenergic neurons. I am finishing over here. Adrenergic neurons, which are acting and synthesized by tyrosine. We already know that the tyrosine is converted into NE, nothing but noradrenaline, and some of the adrenaline is been synthesized by the adrenal medulla from your medullary cortex of kidneys. And also this tyrosine is converted into noradrenaline, and now this noradrenaline is being stored in your synaptical vesicles, and whenever this condition comes, whenever the storage comes, whenever the storage is needed, and whenever the stress condition comes out, whenever the depression condition comes out, whenever the action should be started, this neurotransmitters will come to the edge of your thing and it is being released into your synaptic vesicles. So here I am indicating you, they are released onto the synaptic vesicles. Onto the adrenergic neurons, we know that there are two types of neurotransmitters, or two types of receptors we can call. So that is called as alpha 1 and beta 1. That we already know. Actually we can call it as alpha rather than alpha 1 and beta 1. Why? Because alpha 1 is onto the presynapse, alpha 2 is onto the postsynapse, beta 1 is onto the postsynapse, and beta 1 is onto the presynapse. So there is no indication of B1 and alpha 1 also, but just keep it in mind, they are alpha receptors and beta receptors. We already know that. The remaining process will be the same. Why? Because here the 100% of the neurotransmitter which is being submitted onto the synaptical junction has to be taken up by the postsynapse. But what happens? Only the 70% will catch up by this, and the remaining 30% will be gone back to the presynapse, that we already indicated in the serotonin receptors. So now we need to change this word from SERT to NET. There it is called serotonin reuptake in transporters, and here we call it as norepinephrine transporters. Why? Because it is a norepinephrine transporter neuron. So the words will change, but the concept remains the same. So the concept, the out of which the 70% will have to strike onto the alpha and beta processes, and 30% has to go back to the synaptical vesicles for the conservation of your synaptical vesicles. Why? Because in emergency we can accept this 30% for the control of your depression particles. And so what happens? The 30% has to be controlled. That means the reuptake has to be controlled, so that the 100% will be there onto it, and it strikes your NE receptors, nothing but your alpha receptor and beta receptors, and the depression will be controlled. So this is the work of NE neurons, nothing but adrenergic neurons. So the concept remains the same as I told you before. Now we'll jump to the same category, which is called cholinergic neurons. We know that the cholinergic neurons are being synthesized by the acetylcholine, and also we can control that acetylcholine into the last stage of acetylcholine preparations, and this acetylcholine is being synthesized into your presynapse. It is stored in your synaptic vesicles, and if at all the condition comes, it backs to the synaptic vesicles into the junction. And now we can see here this is being done by the cholinergic neurons, ACH. And again the receptors will change. Why? Because in the adrenergic system it is alpha and beta, but as they are cholinergic neurons, yes, perfectly you know that they are called as M and N, stands for muscarinic and nicotinic receptors. So the concept will remain the same. Here 100% will has to release, only 70% will be taken up by the post junction, the 30% will be reversed back. Here the word can be changed. Why? Because it is NET, it's not NET, it is called ACHT. And we know that this ACHT transporter, which is being metabolized by two enzymes, perfectly we know that they are called MAOA or MAOB. Perfectly they are being taken up by that. This is called cholinergic system. It is done by the ACH. It is done by two enzymes. One is called MAOA, and you have another one called COMT. That is catecholamine methyltransferase and monoamino oxidase A. So these are the two enzymes which are used for the metabolism of ACH, for the reuptake of ACH. So the purpose of now, the main aim of depressants or antidepressants is to increase your quantity of ACH. So how can we increase the quantity of ACH? This is nothing but the controlling of metabolization. That means the controlling of these two receptors, these two enzymes, so that it is not taken up by the presynapse, but it just stays in your postsynapse, and it is being collected by the postsynapse for the more excitation. Why? Because the person is in depressed condition, and the other ones are just the same, that is called histamine neurons, and also you have dopamine neurons. So this is the neurotransmitter synthesis of action where the depressants are mainly occupied. So we can say that the depressants are something which are giving you more happiness, as indicating your emojis, and it is controlling your sadness. It is controlling your sadness as indicated by an emoji here, and you can control your moods by more and more weeping, or more and more happiness could be increased. So we can say that the happiness can be increased, the mood can be neutralized, the mood can be neutralized, the sadness can be decreased by all the neurotransmitters which are purposeful or which are useful for the action of depressants. Those are SET, nothing but the 5-HT3 new serotonin receptors, and it is also called as DA, nothing but the dopamine receptors. They are also called as NE receptors, nothing but noradrenaline receptors, and we have another one called as ACH receptors. So altogether these are the neurotransmitters which always work for the stage of depression. Bye, and we'll see in the next part.